Right there's Mr. Colo can drink her case right there.
We're ready, Uncle Jim.
We're getting ready to go. We're going to hit it, son. Some motley looking crew. We want to get them while they're fresh, eager to go to the North Country. Of course, they don't talk very much. There's a camera lady right there. You can tell they don't talk very much. And right there's the troublemakers of the whole group is right there. Right there's the troublemaker. And Miss Gayle. Troublemaker number one right there. It's 3:30 in the morning in the fine city of Fairbanks. This crew does not look quite as fresh and alert as it was. Everyone is a little bit tired. It has been a full day. Started at 6 this morning, it's 3:30 in the morning. 3.5 hour flight from Seattle. Let me zoom in here on Miss Nancy.
Hold up that building, lady. Thank you. This is a tough time of morning to be shooting those things.
Well, I took a picture when everybody got ready to leave Nashville. I just want to see what it looked like now this morning. There's the Wanderer, the airplane Wanderer right there that holds the record of the Wanderer.
It is 10 to 1 somebody's time. We don't know who.
All right, we're going to the gold mine after. We're at the El Dorado Gold Mine, Fairbanks, Alaska. There's Bob Bristol, folks. Kentucky gold miner right there.
All right, everybody.
Get his picture. He wants to write that off.
You don't have a picture.
I'd like to, you guys and folks just get on board. I'd like to officially welcome everybody right now, okay, to the El Dorado Gold Mine. And folks, we're going to take the train for about a 20-minute ride. We are going inside a very comfortable, shallow permafrost tunnel. And we're the A train. Kick the doors, make sure they're all latched up good and tight. The whistle's a big good morning and all, and we're off and getting going.
Kick that door, Hank.
I think some of you guys in that second car think it's PM instead of AM, huh?
Don't leave without us.
That's okay. We're having fun together. Now I'm going to start by telling you I'm taking you back to September of 1903. And I'm going to explain why they dig in the wintertime and wash in the summer. It's because of the permafrost. They use the strength of it into shafts and tunnels, so they don't have to buy any timber ashore. And then they cover them up and keep them cool, and then wash all day long, meaning 15, 16, 17 hours a day, separating to get the gold. Now we got Adam, my assistant here. We got these monitors for you, and then now on your left is our very first discovery shaft dug by the famous Swedes here in September of 1903. Charlie's on this side, Pete's on the other. They got a bucket on a spindle with two arms. This is the particular means that they chose to bring the material up. Now they let the bucket down to the bedrock, and that's very shallow there, but bedrock can still be 180 feet back here. Then they go down, fill the bucket up, come back and wait for you like this, then when you can buy it, you wind that sucker up. Good morning, guys. Thank you very much. Now we're going to head inside the permafrost tunnel. Here's how shallow we are. Look on your right. Sloped up here, but we just cut a hole, covered it over. You're going to enjoy this. My favorite spot for 2.5 months. The rocker box here. And what we did is took some material from the creek in that bucket, put it in the top, and that's going to add some water. Now watch it drop. It's working again on the fact that we know the gold is almost 20 times stronger than water. Goes through the screen, inside over top of the little bars. They're wood ripples. Now he's going to get a bolt hand, give us an idea of what handing looks like, and when we get up to the main camp, our mining couple beyond the dexter will take us right back to the sluice and get to see some extra demonstrations just before we can. See that action there, watch here. Any signs of that, talking? You got a little piece, okay. All he finds he keeps, oh, he dropped it. No. Thanks, Pete. Gotta have a little humor in the morning, huh, folks? Have a seat. Yeah. Now, the other thing I wanted to show you, too, is you're going to see some bent over trees here on the left when we get going. They are from 1 year, and of all the 22 years I've been here, we've had twice the amount of snow that we normally get. We get 60, 80 inches. We had almost 160. And we still haven't recovered. Look at some of these trees. They're all almost bent right over the line. And these guys here, the limbs are gone down. And I've seen them recover over the years a little bit at a time, but it's incredible. Now we're going to make a turn to the right and stop. Everything you see here is the other end of the permafrost tunnel. We're still back in the early 1900s, by the way. This is our last stop for that. The cables here, they go to the top of the shaft and down the shaft to a bucket. Dirk's here along with Charlie. And if everything works okay, we're going to hoist them up with that little steam engine here. So here he comes.
So, at the bottom of these shafts here, they have a loaded ore car. That's what the guys are pushing along. They lower one of these iron muck buckets down the shaft so they could unload the ore cars into the bucket. And then hoist the buckets back up, run them along these cables here, like you see, up to that pole, called the gym pole. Well, here the buckets would catch, you know. They would then come coasting back down to iron them into these walls here, and they reset. Slow, just like that. And those piles there get pretty big. When the summertime would come, they let them thaw back out again so they could wash all the gold from them. This required a great deal of high-pressure water supplied from trenches dug along the tops of these hills here, channeling millions of gallons of water downhill, gravity locating these hydraulic water cannons. Those water cannons would then be used to blast those piles clean and wash and funnel all the gold through their sluice boxes they had set up nearby. Now behind me here next to Charlie is the boiler I was referring to. They were fueled by wood. But of course the boiler would produce all the steam sent out below into the tunnels in the winters. Someone helped off those piles in the summers, and all the while they powered the steam engines. The ones Earth's operating for. Those were called the steam donkeys. All that's left today of that era is just a few rudiments of equipment like this and memories. But of course, the spirit of Gold Beaver lives on in modern form, and that's what we're going to show you now.
Thanks.
Earl and Engineer Roger. Thank you guys, good job. Well, I'm Yukon Yonda, and that's a nickname I got up in this country a long time ago. My husband and mining partner, Dexter Clark.
Good morning, everybody.
Are you ready to get some gold? Well, kind of, sort of. Are you ready to get some gold? Yeah.
That's good. That's why we're here. Quick word of caution. We are heading back to our operating sluice box, and we want you all to have fun, so be careful. We ask for safety's sake, either before, during, or after the presentation, please do not get down into that sluice box or try to step across it.
Now, the Eldorado is going to give you a hand with the doors on the train. Before you come off, just make sure you keep
There's
your
over there
feet
we've spotted.
You guys.
Yeah, we screwed
Yeah,
up.
scooch on up and scooch. I like that.
Couple of gold miners there we spotted in the hills.
Well, first off, let me let you know a couple of things. For the skeptics that are visiting this morning, Dexter and I are really married, okay? We're also longtime Alaskans, longtime gold miners. I first came to this country back in territory days as a child, 1951. Settled here in the interior 27 years ago. Dexter's going on sourdough status. No matter how you cut that label, that's 30 years of working in the Arctic. Most of us has been in remote sites just south of the Yukon River in an area called the Circle Mining District. The drainage we were working was called the Hair. So we moved just a little closer into town. Close, actually. It's just on the other side of that ridge is the dirt we're working right now. And I've got plumbing and electricity. Little white chair in that small room. Yeah. We are delighted not only to be able to continue mining this close to town, but to be able to have you folks gather around this loose here.
Gonna take those big oil dollars, buy a bunch of gold, wait for the price to go up, never have to work again. Well, along the way I got the fever. Started mining gold on my own about 150 miles northeast of here, out in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness, digging my heart out, searching only for gold mines. But then one very lucky day,
Careful.
I found a dime.
Ah, isn't that sweet?
I should have said gold digger from Illinois.
You'd have hit the nail on the head. Now, when we get these out and share them with folks, it does give us a certain kind of value. It's put a roof over our heads, clothes on our back. My dentist takes gold. Our grocer takes gold. But the market's here for that. We got other nuggets, though, that we got stuck under our belts that you just can't imagine. And it's all lessons that we've learned from this land. We put together a collection of short stories, and they run the gamut from crashing his airplane to being able to sit down right next to a full-grown wolf named Utah. We put together this book. It's called On Golden Ground, because that, quite frankly, is where we have spent all these years. It's limited edition right now, so if you get a copy, please let us know so we can sign it over with our best wishes.
Yes, indeed. No ghostwriters here, just our own words with the help of an excellent editor who picked only the best of the rest of the story. I join you, kind of put a little sentiment in there. One more ripple to go, and we show you how it all comes together. First,
Let me get out of here. in out. It's called concentrate. Please have a seat so folks behind you be able to see. We've used this ripple for over 20 years. It literally keeps us on the pay. We're able to stop the water at any time, pull that pay out, pan it down, and know exactly where we are on the floor of the pit. Now you see, crew, I'm going to pan this down. It's really easy.
Trying to get gold into each upper's hand by feeling the pan around it. Been scraping hard on the bottom. Don't even see the gold. There's your dinner, dear.
I'm sure everybody here will recognize these as gold pans. Our pioneers called them mineral bowls. All by themselves, a gold pan is the most important. They make
On my left says exit to gold panning. Just inside the tunnel entrance, couple of helpers handing out the folk sacks that concentrate. Blend it from the flute, grab a bag of dirt, bring it to the panning area, pick a spot like any of the many gold pans, set aside the little film container you need to put your gold into. Yep, you can sit down to pan for gold. Took me over 20 years to figure that one out. Learned it from these young fellas right here at the flute. There's room for everybody to sit in the panning area. The water's warm, no excuses. Get settled in. Dump the whole bag of dirt in the pan. Toss the bag aside, fill the pan with water, start to swirl it around. You hear that grinding sound? Your first clue that everything's going just right, keep swirling. And there you are, panning for gold in Alaska. One man's dream, another man's nightmare. Yes, this should look like much soup. The soupier the better. Gold is so heavy like a man in quicksand. The gold is going immediately to the bottom of the pan. Right now, just like the flute, there's no gold in the top layer at all. We start to wash away just the top layer. The action here reminds me of a wave coming in out of an ocean at the beach. You want this wave action to pick up just the lightest top standing gravel. Bigger rocks that aren't moving, no problem. A little water to rinse them, pick them one at a time, or rake these larger rocks together. Just fill it up with water. The pan won't hold too much water. Start swirling it around. Now, you want to hear it grinding when you're swirling. If it's not grinding, either you're being a little too timid or you don't have enough water in there. Look for those bigger rocks. Sometimes they show up right away. Promise somebody back home something special from Alaska.
I believe Marilyn's got the hang of it.
Right next to your goal. Think about it. So go in, just make sure they're clean before you just fold them and throw them back to the top of the flag. Help them coming around. Get them started.
Bristol's got a good eye.
Why did we do that? I'll have a go. We'll get another bag over here. Kelly, another bag over here. All right, go ahead.
This is a mean-looking group of miners right here. If I've ever seen any, they're there.
I got you got Nancy over here. I'm bringing them over for winter.
Well, this is our crew went. We'll get a close-up at all this gold sitting.
Well, thanks.
I didn't get one. I want to take a picture of y'all.
You're right here.
I didn't get another bag. Oh, did you pour some out?
It's right here.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this lady over here is going to be arrested for getting into some property she's not supposed to be in. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We didn't see Bruce then, they took off.
I saw him just going in. They probably get some coffee. You know Bruce. He sells something free.
Getting really nice over there doing that go. You done good, Stinson.
Marilyn's been trying to get me to memorize that itinerary.
Now there's some gold miners, and right there's a gold miner if I've ever seen one. I believe he looks like, what they call him?
I don't mean to give you a short Pecos Pete.
Now what they call him? Right there's a sourdough if I've ever seen one. A sourdough right there.
At least he's not whispering.
We're outside the biggest gold con game in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Eagle here. You got to be quiet for the eagle.
Gold con game.
Yeah. This is the #1 gold con game in Alaska. Huh?
It is.
That guy said he crashed his airplane. I don't believe he ever seen an airplane.
I tell you one thing, I hope they never go from here to Sevierville or Maggie Valley or Gatlinburg.
He was a cedar. That's what we said. I was going to count be the cedar in them sacks.
Right there's a sourdough too if I've ever seen one.
Right there.
Sourdough Graves, there he is, folks.
Right there.
Sourdough
He got more gold than anybody out there. I knew he would too.
Let me show it to you.
He got more gold than anybody. That hook nose did it.
Got $29 for tour director.
And then they charge you $49 to take that gold and put it into something.
Come here.
Whoops, excuse me.
Oh, come on, Nickerson. I promise. We just say go. Nothing to this gold mine. You bet. Absolutely. That is a wonderful thing. That's one way to be warmed from the inside out. Just a little hug. The other way is to have a handful of gold. All women.
Y'all get over here. Get over here.
I have nothing to do with that. They hire me to find a gold miner. We're going to get all women. Have a miner.
Whoop, I'm just in.
Everything else they're doing.
If the guys can take them, y'all can pick the picture.
I mine.
Give them all a kiss, Mr. Sourdough. Give them all a kiss. Mr. Sourdough, give them all a kiss.
Yes, I have to, but it's so much more. That's why I said
We won't make a picture if you give them all a kiss.
now I got 5 acres and 1 cow left. Still doing it, but nothing like the old days.
Where are those women?
Where are we at here?
There you go.
We just, how come I'm not in the middle of that? Wait a minute, stop it.
Well, get it. Hey.
Now, we say go. Nothing to this gold mine.
That'll make some story.
Appreciate it. Awesome.
I like it. See that it's kind of articulated. It's kind of, it's not straight line. You might think it would be. It's got a kind of a bends to it. The whole pipeline is set up. It's set up to withstand the weather, withstand earthquakes. It can withstand up to an 8.5 earthquake, and that's kind of why it's bending like that. And also it moves around. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. These are the vertical support members. These are called vertical support members, and they're buried anywhere from 15 to 70 feet into the ground. And they hold it up. This is a lateral support member, and these are shoes, head-sewn shoes. And so, what you can kind of see on the parts here, the rubber, it actually moves. If you have like an earthquake, they have big earthquakes. They have about 80 seismic disturbances in Alaska every week. So it's quite a seismically active area. So the whole pipeline will actually move. And these are not bolted down. These are on shoes, or these are on like Teflon pads. So it's kind of slides around, and you can see there's dates right here actually too, of when it's moved. It's kind of moved around from place to place. And it says pretty interesting. The actual pipe itself is about 48 inches in diameter. You can see there's actually a piece of pipe over there. But it's about 48 inches in diameter. It's got about 4 inches of fiberglass around it, and it's got a galvanized sheeting around that. And the oil is moved here at about 5 to 7 miles an hour, so think about a person walking. It's going through there about 5 to 7 miles an hour, and it's moving this way, from north to south. And it's under a lot of pressure. It's under about 1,100 psi of pressure. It's highly pressurized.
but they have pump stations that pump it to it, the jet engines that pump it through. There's like a picture of a jet, of one of the pump stations over there. So it's moving through there. They move through about a million barrels a day through there. So it's about 20% of the domestic oil production in the United States. The rest is in Louisiana, Texas, down there. And you might wonder what these fins are on top. These are because of the permafrost I was telling everybody about. It's built in permafrost. And so what they need to do is they need to keep it stable, because if they don't keep it stable, it could sink and cause damage to the pipeline and so on. So they had to put a passive refrigeration system in. And what this is it's two heating pipes that go down to the ground, and they're filled with a liquid, anhydrous ammonia liquid. And what happens is if the ground temperature becomes hotter than the air temperature, anhydrous ammonia turns from a liquid to a gas, and it rises up through these tubes, and it dissipates into the atmosphere, dissipates the heat into the atmosphere, and then when it just does that, the gas actually turns back to a liquid, and it goes back down to the ground. So it continually keeps the ground cool. It's kind of a unique engineering thing. And they had to do that because of the Arctic weather.
Why can't we hear the oil going through there?
You can't hear it. It's pretty quiet, but it's got it's a pretty thick. It's like a high tensile carbon.
Behind them and it's really easy for her to come out and teach us some rights and laughs and some of the other intricacies of being a lead dog. Of course, it's fun for me.
Well, of course, you've known the older dogs and the younger dogs since not only day one, but minute one. I mean, this relationship you build even when they're born is really unique.
Well, it is. I've got one. We have all the females that are whelp, and then we have one more that's due whelp, and she's over at the house with us. All of them are over at the house. But Agamic is just being as slow as she can be. She was due about 3 days ago, and I keep checking her constantly. I want to be with her when she whelps to make sure that everything goes safely. But most importantly, to be able to bond with the puppy. And although they're nicer stuff for the first 10 days of their life, they have a good sense of smell. So we'll pick up each puppy individually and blow across their nose. So this bonding, of course, it continues throughout their entire lives, but it is most important right here in the early weeks and months. Now these guys have really started on their second phase of their training. You can see them getting around this yard pretty well. So they need bigger areas to explore. So we take them on daily walks in the woods. And what we like to do is take their mother with us and some of the retired dogs, because we're trying to teach them the same love of adventure that we have. And also the beginnings of the trust to be trusted relationship. And that's pretty easy to do because there's so many obstacles out there on the trail. There's a little bit of water to swim through, some steep cliffs to go up, and some big logs to climb over. And we're there to encourage them over the obstacles, praise them on the other side, and most importantly, if it's too much for them, then we're there to lift them over it. And this way, they can start to understand that we'll be there for them at every stage of their life. And that is most important when they start running in harness and racing, that they can understand that we'll never ask them for going farther or faster than they're capable of.
Well, it won't be long now as these guys' legs get longer. They're really moving around a lot. They'll get to pull a sled. How old will they be when they really form a team for the first time?
Well, that's an exciting day for us. We wait till they're about 5 months of age, till they have lost their puppy teeth and they're growing in the adult teeth. And at that time, we take one adult leader out in front and 4 to 6 puppies behind. And it's so instinctive in the puppies to pull that within just a minute or two, they look like a small adult team of dogs. So we actually have a saying here at the kennel that it only takes us 2 minutes to teach them to go, but about 2 years to teach them to walk.
Well, now, what happens though when my racing days are over? Do I get to still live around here and take advantage of all this good treatment?
Well, absolutely. Right now I have 28 retired dogs, and you're more than welcome to retire here too, Jay. All the dogs that we raise here at the kennel and that race with us retire with us, and they're very important. Of course, they're our dear friends that help keep the couch warm, but the oldest ones, let's see, we've got Winning Colors back there, and I think Coppers is out here somewhere too. They're both 15 years old, the 2 oldest members of the kennel, and then Griffin and TW are some of our newly retired ones at 9 and 10 years of age. And so they help us with the puppies, of course, but the newly retired dogs work with the yearlings and the 2-year-olds right up until they enter into their first long-distance race.
I do think my racing days are done, so I'll come and see you. But I'm glad yours aren't, and that's all those of us who follow this sport are looking forward to more achievements. After many Iditarod victories and others, what an interesting life you've led. But I can't help but wonder what a nice girl from Cambridge, Massachusetts is doing in a place like this. And I mean, come on now, do you really like your job?
Yes, I love my job, and although I was born in Cambridge, I was definitely not born to live in the city. We're going back there this month, and I think 5 days of time will be about it for me, and then I'm ready to come back home. I've been up here for 27 years, and most of my time has been spent living out in Bush, Alaska, in a homestead type situation without any running water or electricity. And my first 10 years, I lived up there alone with my dogs, training and racing, and then David and I married and were there another 10 years before we had our first daughter, Tekla. And when she got to be school age, we started building this place here in town. Last year, Tekla was in first grade, and we, of course, brought all the dogs into town with us. In fact, Tekla had a group that she cared for, and when she'd come home from school, she'd hook up a small team and head out on the trail back here. And she had a tent camp that she'd set up to simulate the checkpoints on the Iditarod. And she'd stop at the camp and rest her dogs and give them a snack to eat. And then at the end of the day, she'd always won the Iditarod.
Of course, that didn't surprise you. When she started talking, it was pretty obvious where her interests were, weren't they?
Well, definitely. Both she and Shoshana, their first words were dog.
Now, of course, we saw you working out in the wintertime, and we had a chance to see the cart ride. Is there any way, though, else that when it gets real hot with no snow that you can stay in shape?
Right, and I think I can hear you. We're always looking for fun methods of keeping the dogs in shape. And our favorite on a day like today is to use the riverboat. We can put up to 20 dogs at a time in there and go down to one of the islands on the Tanana. And we just let the dogs run loose with us. And they get to swim in the river, so everybody has a very good time there. And right here in the yard, we can use the dog merry-go-round, especially the young dogs like this. We'll attach a dog to each one of the stations, and they love to pull this round and round, and they get it going very fast. And then if one of them decides that they've had enough of the pulling, well, they can just jump on board these platforms, whoops, can't push it, and take a little ride.
All right, you've actually got a brake on that thing, so you can add resistance or let it off. So the mobile home, and he makes speeches right off the back of that car.
Oh, you got to get that. Alaskan Dawn right for
the
color.
painting on the river, the old
Picture of that.
they made a creeper boat out of that. They never thrown anything away. And how about right next door, you've got an Alaskan Class C motorhome. Little three-wheeler camper size.
Little idea there,
More rivers and roads. So that's a great way to get around this time of year.
Here's another one. Put them up on the back.
The camera. You want me to see what that
What's
says?
that camera?
It says camera.
Well, this afternoon, you are 1,800 miles south of the North Pole. 100 miles south of the Arctic Circle is what we call the interior of Alaska. Now, this is the land between the mountains. The Brooks Range on the north, but you may want to wait until you don't have to shoot out a window.
Ours is different.
Now, reindeer are domesticated caribou. They're the same animal. Just the one has been tamed, and one is raised in captivity, and the other runs wild, of course. And the little gal here, second from the left, she's about 16 weeks old. She was born this spring. Her name is Amber. And those two little antlers are her first set of antlers. She will grow those all her life, as does her mother. And these are the only females in the deer family that actually get those antlers. They're covered in velvet right now, and that's causing them to grow. But the females lose theirs at the termination of their pregnancy, and the males, right after the reproductive season is over with, the rut, they'll scrape that velvet off, and the antlers just fall off, and they grow a new set. The longer hair on their back is actually hollow inside. That's what's left of their winter coat. That's why they look a little shaggy. They'll sort of cut that out. And eventually they'll grow a new coat in time for the cold season this year upcoming. That also makes them very good swimmers. It's like having a life jacket on. They ride real high in the water when they migrate over rivers and lakes. When the wild cousins out in the bush will get over water hazards very well. Find powder. This is called glacial flower, and it's really a very good name. The glacier deposits this up in the mountains. And later on, of course, the glacier rivers rise first and back up these smaller streams. That's why we've got so much water in the river right now, because it's standing on its side. And we sort of just went over the dam right here. And this is really kicking up now on the right-hand side. You can see all this material stirred up. And these are the very patterns that Captain Ken is keeping an eye on, because the channel is not in the same place today that it was yesterday or last month or last week. And so he's got to watch these patterns to determine where the deep holes are. When he sees one of these patterns that looks like tea boiling in a saucepan, he knows he's in deep water. And then indicates these deep holes down there. You'll see where the bank is being eroded away here on the right. Where does all that silt go? Well, some of it goes 1,250 miles to the mouth of the Yukon, but some of it goes sandbars over here on the left. There are many islands and many more channels.
37077.
Off to the left-hand side. We went for a ride with Gayle in this little airplane, and we looked down on this. You swear you were looking at hair and a pigtail or a big bowl of spaghetti. These channels just crisscrossing each other and skin stores. This is that most magnificent items she makes out of natural material. And we'll get a chance to check the garden out, those big Alaskan-sized cabbages. Dixie, we'll be back in a little while, and we'll see you at fish camp. Good hour on shore coming up on this beautiful day. Now this is a little family reunion that Dixie's having today here, and she's going to tell us all about her memories of fish camp. So I'm going to introduce her, and she can introduce our guest here. The young lady I'm going to have you meet is, I consider, a national treasure. She is Witchet Athabascan from Fort Yukon. Let's say good afternoon to our good friend Dixie Alexander. Dixie, Nanta Donka.
Thank you. I'm real pleased to be able to share just a little bit about fish camp life with you. This camp here in the Tanana River is very similar to the camp I grew up on the Yukon River. My family went to camp yesterday, but this camp is very similar, although I think our camp up there is just a little bit bigger than this, and that's because I have 6 sisters, 6 brothers, cousins, lots of grandparents that always visit us in fish camp. So we have a lot more canvas walls and like the school here in camp. Very comfortable to spend the summer in the wall tents. We fix them up really nice. Sometimes if it gets chilly at night, we just build a fire in the wall tent. But it's really exciting for the whole family to be able to spend all summer outside, especially after being inside all winter. And our smokehouse is such that this one back here. But the friends I have here today is Kelly and Dallas. They're both from Indiana. They're up here visiting. I'm teaching Kelly how to make a Athabascan moose skin dress, and she's almost done with it. And she's doing a real good job. But this camp is very similar to the camp I grew up on the Yukon River.
Well, now, is this where you learned to sew, was a fish camp with your elders?
This is an excellent time for the whole family to learn many different types of skills. You know, my sisters, after all the chores are done around camp, all the salmon's put up in the smokehouse, we would learn how to tan moose hides, caribou hides. We also learned how to do beadwork, porcupine quill work, lots of skin sewing for winter clothing. And all these skills we would learn from my mother and also my grandmother. But this is also a good time for my brothers too. They they learned how to build fish schools like this one here, which they still do today, and to make snowshoes and dog sleds, and they learned all these skills from my father. That was the main purpose. We went to fish camp because in the winter months my father went trapping, and he always checked his trap line with dog team. He usually kept about 22 dogs plus puppies, and each one of his dogs would eat 1 dehydrated salmon a day, so you can imagine how much salmon we had to harvest for the whole team for the whole winter's use. And that's not even including the salmon that we put up for ourselves. But I remember many days my father would move around the fish wheel until he hits a good spot next to the cut bank where the salmon tend to run pretty strong. Some days he would even have to turn off the wheel. We could catch up to a couple hundred salmon a day. When we're catching that much salmon, everybody kind of stays busy.
Now we've got a good-looking critter on the table here. What sort of species are you going to work on this afternoon?
This here is a chum salmon. We also have a nickname for these guys. We call them the dog salmon, and the only reason we call them the dog salmon is because they run twice in one season. Therefore, we can catch a lot more of the chum salmon, more so than the kings and the silvers. So it makes sense for us to use these for the dogs. I've seen them get up to 23 pounds. This one here is probably 8 or 9 at the most.
All right, now keep your cameras handy because it won't take Dixie very long to make parts out of the hole here. She's going to start with an incision right forward of the tail and then go down the backbone on either side. Quickly create the fillets. They remain joined at the tail so they can hang over the drying rack. And the backbone and viscera are separated. Backbones would be dried. They'd be fed in the wintertime. The head is removed. Heads could be split and dried. Years ago, they were actually boiled to the oil that was used for lamps and other conditioning purposes. And once everything is separated, you'll score those fillets about 1 inch apart, quickly down each side, and that creates more surface area for the smoke and the fresh air. There's no artificial refrigeration or any sort of chemical process used, just that quick. There you have your well-dressed chum salmon. Faster than a penny honey check. Good job, Dixie. Thank you. Now, on a warm day like this, when you start outdoors, it's best to go right in the smokehouse.
Well, usually when we're catching a lot of salmon, we don't like to put a wet salmon like that directly under the smoke barrel, so we use the air drying rack like this over here. Air dry the salmon just a few minutes until it gets a nice tacky texture, and rotate it into the smokehouse, rotate it all around the smokehouse until your salmon is thoroughly dehydrated. Once it's dehydrated, it doesn't weigh that much at all. Very light. This is really important when my dad goes on a long trap line trip. The weight of the set is important.
Well, now, first, the flavor of the salmon is important. And do you have a certain kind of wood you recommend for the best tasting salmon?
Well, when we make salmon for ourselves, we're really picky about how we fix it. We'll wash it really good first and then put it in a salty brine. Then we would smoke it with a really good sweet wood. And up here we use alder wood. It makes for a good tasting salmon. But when we're making salmon for the dogs, we don't do any of that. We just smoke it with cottonwood or spruce. They're not too picky.
Well, Dixie Must-See Joe, thank you very much. We appreciate your being at camp today. Kelly, Dallas, good to see you guys. Thank you. Dixie's going to clean up, and everybody's going to jump in the boat and commute back to Kena Village here in a minute or two. And you will be Dixie's guest at her summer home and see this beautiful beadwork that she does. And it is magnificent. Dixie has a coat in the museum in my hometown. The Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. That's how good she is. And so you'll see that quality work in just a bit. We'll introduce our young guys to you. Tell you a little bit about our circuit tour coming up. On Dixie's behalf, thank you again for your kind attention.
That girl cleaned the fish before.
And this is going to be a great...
I see the moon. How far I know.
She's climbing right on up. Their t-shirts. Oh, just small t-shirts.
What they say about
Hello,
that?
everyone.
One was Olympic something.
Can we get a quick discount?
Okay, I think it's better than that. Hello, everyone.
Hey!
Hello. Good job. My name is Ginger, and I am a Newback Eskimo from Shaktoolik, Alaska. And Shaktoolik is snow along the Iditarod Trail and also on the coast of Alaska. And it has a population of about 230 people. So this is probably more people than live in my hometown. And I'm a student here at UAF majoring in elementary education. And I do plan to return home or to another village in rural Alaska after I graduate. But that's enough about me. Right now we're in the heart of Athabascan Indian country. And we'll be sharing with you how these people lived in this environment for over 10,000 years and also how they adapted to village life and Western culture in just the past century. And we'll have 4 stops on our tour. We need you to please try and stay with us. At the end of our tour, we'll have 15 to 20 minutes to roam around, ask questions, and take any pictures we might have missed. And that's just to make sure that you don't run away from us while we're giving our tour. And also, there are 4 other groups rotating, so as soon as we're done, we need to move on to our next stop. Also, I'd like to ask that you not stand on the benches. They're a bit unstable. So, speaking of unstable things, Allison is going to share with you about about herself and the setting we're in right now. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd also like to welcome you to the Chena Indian Village. My name is Allison, and like Ginger, I'm half Inupiaq Eskimo, but I was born and raised here in Fairbanks, Alaska, and the last 4 years I've been a kinesiology student at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, and I'm a Naval ROTC student, and in about 6 months I'll become a Marine Corps aviator. And I've had a lot of questions on my way in here, and if anyone's curious, I just want to let you know I ripped all the ligaments in my ankle, and I just had surgery, but I get my cast off in a week, so everything's okay. But right now, if you look around you, this is a very typical setting of an Athabascan Indian village after contact with Western civilization, and this happened about 150 years ago when prospectors came into this area, and they're looking for gold up and down the riverways, and they traveled in stern-wheeler steamboats, much like the one we traveled in today. And once they came here, they're followed by missionaries, traders, and trappers. And all of these people and their ways changed the Athabascan lifestyle forever. They began building trading posts along the rivers. And inside these posts, there was food, utensils, clothing, tools, and guns. And this allowed the Athabascans to begin trading furs like you see around Ginger for tools such as the saw and the axe. And this allowed them to cut down larger trees and in turn build more permanent cabins like this one you see behind me. So they gave up their semi-nomadic lifestyle to become permanent villagers. And actually this cabin is very similar to the ones you would see in Athabascan Indian villages today, except for there might be a few small differences like electricity, email, and telephone. But the way that they begin building a cabin like this is they clear the land of all the trees and take the larger spruce poles, peel the bark off of them, stack them on top of each other for the walls, and if you look closely you can see that there's moss in the gaps, and this would hopefully keep the wind out. And then they take the younger spruce poles, lay them flat across the top for the roof, cover this with a layer of spruce bark, and weigh it all down with sod. And as you can see, there's a lot of grass growing in our roof, and we actually wanted this for a few different reasons. The first is that the roots would act as a natural barrier to the rain, and also it helps to prevent erosion. But eventually it did rot, so every 5 to 10 years you had to replace your roof. And at the end of the tour, we'll open the cabin up, and you're welcome to look inside, and you'll find there's furniture made from wood found here on the land. And in the wintertime, it's kept warm by a 55-gallon oil drum that's been turned into a stove. And I'd like to share with you an earlier cabin. If you look to your left, it's what we call a trapper's wine cabin. And if you can't see it right now, we'll pass by it on our way to our next stop. But these cabins are built about a day's journey apart along a man's trap line. And what this would allow him to do is he can wake up in a cabin like this in the morning, check his traps for the whole entire day, traveling up to 20 miles in 60 below weather. And just before it became dark, he'd come across a cabin like this. And inside was all the food and wood that he would need to survive. And anyone could use these cabins. There was one rule that everyone understood, and that was on your return trip, you had to make sure and replenish anything that you had used. And this may not look like very much to you, but believe me, if you're running around outside and it's 60 below, you'd probably be very happy to come across a cabin like this. And once the trapper came home...
Give us the cue.
Good job, guys. Now this is a Wolverine Pelt, and this is very valuable for two reasons. One of the main reasons is that the fur has a natural oil on it that helps prevent our breath from freezing onto it. So it's used around the inner part of the parka rest to prevent frostbite. Give it up, guys. And also, this is a very ferocious and cunning animal, so only the best and luckiest Athabascan hunters came home with this prize. In fact, we've been told that if a bear and a wolverine were to meet on a trail, the bear would be the first to step aside and let the wolverine pass. And now we have a red and silver fox. And these two are so closely related they can be found in the same litter. They are very abundant here. Now this is these are muskrat pelts. And these are very warm and can be used to make a winter parka, although it might take 40 to 60 of these to complete a full-size parka. Now this animal has several names. Right now it's in its winter coat that's white with a brown tip at the tail. And that's what we call them ermines. But in the summers they turn a nice chocolate brown, and then we just call them weasels. But it does have a third name. Welcome to the really big state where we call this the Texas polar bear. Now this is the marten pelt, and 3 of these can be used to make a nice winter hat. All you do is use one for each side, one for the top, and leave the tail on for decoration if you want. Ladies? Yep, it's a mink. You might be surprised to learn that this pelt was not really valued until contact with the outside world, when it earned the name the money pelt. The last one is the beaver, and these animals have a long guard hair and a thick underfur, so they're very warm. Their pelts are very warm, and they can be used to make a nice hats and boots and things like that. But also, they are herbivores, so they're made to be a parasite, and therefore is considered a delicacy. But it is time to move on to our next stop, where we will take you back about 10,000 years and show you how the Athabascans lived before contact with the outside world. Well, on the back we have Dixie's family trademark, and that's the tufted caribou hair, and also beadwork surrounding that, and it's all under moose hide backing. And often a woman could tell where another woman is from just by the designs on her parka. Thank you, Allison. Well, you do have one more stop over with Dave at the dogs, but we have, this does conclude your guided tour with Allison and me. It has been our pleasure sharing with you about our culture and the Athabascan culture, and we hope that you take home what you've learned and share it with your family and friends, and maybe convince them to come and visit us in December or January. In my Inupiaq language, Kayanak Baksulina, that means thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, you do have one more stop after this. It's over at the dog kennel. And after that, you'll have about 10 or 15 minutes to roam around the village on your own. And there should be tour guides at every stop that we've taken you to, so feel free to ask them any questions that you might have. Also, I do recommend you use the restrooms on shore because there will be long lines when you get to the boat. And you can either go to the running water with toilet on the far side of the village, or if you want, there's outhouses all throughout the village, and that makes for a great Alaskan experience. My most important announcement is when you hear the boat whistle twice, that is your cue to reboard. So before I let you go, over to your last stop, I'd like to say in my native language also, Koyana, and that means thank you, and I hope you had a good day today. So Ginger's off to your right, and she'll take you to your last stop.
Will actually stick out the back. That way, you can attach her to the sled, and she can continue pulling through that windstorm, being protected by that beautiful red jacket. I think these guys have got careers in modeling, frankly. Now, the next thing that happened is the dogs adapted to the work they do, which, of course, is running. They got to have tough feet for that. And they do that. Very thick paths. These paths become heavily calloused during the 2,000 to 4,000 miles each dog runs every winter. Again, though, there are circumstances where those feet get extra care from me, especially abrasive snow. That's like sandpaper or fresh snow. And what fresh snow does is it creates snowballs between their toes that rub and irritate them. So if I see that developing, I stop my sled. But imagine this. If I have a 20-dog team in front of me, I have 80 of these booties out of my supply and put one on each foot. I think we'll get Keita back here and we'll put one on. Keita, come on. Now the booty is actually just like a sock, but instead of having elastic, it has a little Velcro closure. Come on, Keita, come on. She said it's hot today. Now, the booty actually, Jackie will put it on, it just slips on just like a sock right over the top of her foot. There's that little Velcro closure there, it holds it in place, and now she's got her bright red Nike on. She's all set to go to the races. And now the last thing I want to share with you is how does this trust and be trusted relationship that we've been nurturing with these dogs since they were little pups when we first held them in our hands, how does that work out on the trail? Well, these guys, rely on us for things like care, nutrition, and guidance in the... Hey, Egan, come here. Egan. Well, I know, but he's going to go in anyway. They're protective over who has the hole. It's kind of like, I want to sit in the hole now. But how does this relationship that we've nurtured since we were little pups work? Well, they rely on us every day for things like care, nutrition, and guidance in the way we've trained them, but we will also rely on them and their instincts when we're out in the wilderness. And I think the best example of that actually happened to my wife, Susan. Now, she was traveling on a frozen river. Our trail went down the center. We'd used it many times. On this day, it was different, though, because the dog suddenly stopped and jumped right. She called him back, but they quickly went right again. And she realized the dogs were trying to communicate something urgent to her. So what she did is she allowed those leaders to take the team off the ice, through the deep snow, up to the right-hand bank. And just as the sled was safely on shore, the ice behind them collapsed. They could have been swept away in the water if it hadn't been for the dogs. So you can see how it works out there. It's their trust in our guidance and care, but it's also us trusting in them and their instincts who will not only get us to the finish line, but can save our lives many times. And speaking of time, is this your last stop? Okay, well this is free time in the village, which is always a lot of fun, because if you've got a spot that you saw earlier and didn't have enough time, you're welcome to revisit it and spend some time there. Dixie's over there with her beautiful artwork, and it's a lot of fun to visit her. And these buildings here have artifacts.
Bob Harper over to your left for the cabbages. Marilyn and Bud back here. Probably to your left. Hi. Let's get my breath back from the truth.
We don't sit up here before.
Did you?
No, we was on the next one.
It's nice.
I thought Bristol was going to leave us. Going in. He got off and went in the place, and then when he, I didn't see him get back on, and I saw him catch us with that boat, and looked at people. I told Bristol, I said, I thought they was bringing you. He said, no, they never. He said, if I'd have missed the boat, they'd never brought me on that. Just nasty water. His boat, he parked his boat in some places that I put him.
Me easy. But I did see some jet skis.
I wouldn't have hardly put a jet ski in there, though.
No, I wouldn't.
Would you have crossed that up there with a jet ski?
No. It's all too messy. And it's
Martha was drinking a cup of coffee and almost dropped it in his sleep.
Pretty interesting though. Did y'all have the two little old girls that were Eskimos?
Yeah.
Cute ones.
All right, now again on the left, we're going to see many more today. Many World War II veterans, so you'll remember that particular Coleman car probably rode around in a lot of those in the 40s. Rakowski's don't own the Brown House anymore, and they actually sold that some years ago. And this is where the Reagans stayed. Those of you going home on Alaska Airlines, when you get up to the second level of the airport, you'll see a room on your left as you head to your gates. There's a sign on the door that says the Pope and the President's Room. That's where the two had their meeting. May 4th, 1984. There's a picture of the Pope and President Reagan on the wall there. It's kind of interesting, the Secret Service camped out totally around this house about 3 deep for a week. Interesting form of wildlife, those guys. Now, right up ahead of the boat, I think Captain Ken's got the camera on some of the tall buildings up there on the ridge about 12 o'clock. That's the campus of America's farthest northerly the scientific labs and offices. Right straight ahead of us, the big building with a satellite dish on it is part of one of their research buildings. After services downtown, they've been working on this place for a couple of years. It'll be fully enclosed by this fall, and they'll start having services here. But what is interesting about this is they left some poles down on the rack so you can see the logs, how straight they are. When you clean the limbs off and take the bark off, that's your house log or building log. And that is an excellent building material, and there's lots of it. So there we go. We got a whole crew over there tonight. Hi, everybody. Great job. Fairbanks Native Bible Church. They've got a lot to be proud of over there. Doing it themselves. Typical Alaskan community. Now we've got all kinds of transportation pulled up here to have dinner at the pump house. Got a float plane and some jet skis, later on canoes and kayaks, cars in the parking lot. Transportation. Don't miss a drive over to the Esther Valley. Take a look at some of those, where those gold mines were. Now we'll probably get a little whistle from the Senator's Saloon here. You guys hang on to your beer over there on the deck. That whistle goes off. Water coming out of the old nozzle here. Show you the business end. Oh yeah, I see it. And there's some mining gear up on shore. A drag line bucket. These things that look like teeth out here close to the road are old bridge buckets. That's where all this gravel came from. The hydraulic bridges dug up hundreds of thousands of tons of that gravel, and we recycle that. Use it for foundations and things of that nature. Well, one more look at Discovery Number 1, who probably served those that wanted a little boat ride from 1955 until 1970-71. And back out here to check on us, our senior captain. Cap, we had a great day. Thank you, Captain Jim Binkley on the left-hand side right now. Absolutely 2 thumbs up kind of a day. Thanks for making it easier to break a trail. Take the rest of the day off, okay, Cap? You know, he swears his hair wasn't that white until he became a riverboat pilot. We sure had fun, and thank Mary B for us. Captain Jim Binkley. A lot of people ask, why do we have so many trampolines in the backyard? If you locked your kids indoors 7 months out of the year, you sure want something like that rather than the master bedroom mattress. I actually think it's kind of like hula hoops. Susie got one, so I want one too.